My name is Olivia, and I'm only 8 years old. Before all of this happened, I thought church was just a place where I had to wear itchy dresses and sit very still. I thought Jesus was just a man in a picture book who liked sheep and lived in a place with lots of clouds. To be honest, I didn't think he was real. I thought he was kind of like a fairy tale or a super old story that grown-ups told so kids would be good and not hit their brothers or sisters. I thought being a Christian was just something you did on Sundays so you wouldn't get in trouble with God, who I thought was like a grumpy principal in a big office. I didn't really like the songs because they were long, and I didn't like the pews because they made my legs feel sleepy. I just wanted to go outside and play in the dirt. I thought the Bible was just a giant book of rules that made life less fun. But I was wrong about all of it. It is Tuesday, January 27th, 2026, as I tell you this. Exactly 13 days ago, on January 14th, 2026, my whole world stopped. It was a Wednesday, and the sky was very dark and grumpy. It was raining really hard, the kind of rain that makes big bubbles on the street. I love the rain because I have these bright yellow boots that my grandma bought me. They are the color of a happy lemon, and I call them my super splashers. They make a loud pop squish sound when I jump in water. I was running through the driveway, trying to find the biggest puddle because I wanted to see if I could make the water splash higher than my head. I remember the splash and the smell of wet dirt and the sound of my mom calling for me to come inside for dinner. Then my boots slipped on some slippery green moss near the edge of the pavement. My head hit the hard ground and the sky just went away. Everything turned into a very deep, quiet sleep. It didn't hurt. It just felt like someone turned off the lights in my brain very fast. The next thing I knew, I wasn't cold or wet anymore. I wasn't laying on the hard driveway. I was standing in a place that felt like a big, warm hug that never ends. There was light everywhere, but it didn't hurt my eyes like the sun does when you look at it too long. This light was different. It felt like sunshine made of sugar and velvet. It was thick, but I could breathe it in. When I breathed, it felt like my lungs were filling up with bubbles of joy. I looked down at my feet, and I wasn't wearing my yellow boots anymore. My feet were bare, but the ground felt soft, like walking on a cloud that was also a marshmallow. Then I saw him. He wasn't a picture in a book, and he wasn't far away on a throne. He was standing right there, just a few steps from me. He had the kindest eyes I have ever seen. They were brown, like the color of warm cocoa, but they had little sparkles in them like stars. His face looked like every nice thing anyone has ever said to me was wrapped up in a smile. He didn't look old, and he didn't look young. He just looked like home. I said, "Are you the Jesus from my Sunday school?" I felt a little bit shy because he was so bright, but I also felt like I could tell him any secret, and he would just laugh and love me more. He knelt down so he was my size. He didn't look at me with sadness, and he didn't look like he was mad that I fell. He looked at me like I was his best friend in the whole universe. "I am Olivia," he said. His voice was like music that you can feel in your tummy. It was soft like a whisper, but strong like the ocean. I reached out and touched his hand, and I felt so much love that I started to giggle. It was the kind of giggle you get when you're being tickled by someone you love. I wasn't scared that I had died. I wasn't worried about my mom or my yellow boots. I felt like I had finally woken up from a long, confusing dream, and everything was finally right. He stayed there on one knee for a long time, just looking at me. I could feel his heart, and his heart felt like it was beating for me. He told me that he knew my name before the world was even a ball of dirt. He said he saw every time I shared my cookies and every time I cried because I was lonely. He made me feel like I was the most important person ever, but at the same time, I knew he felt that way about everyone. That's how big his heart is. "Olivia," he said, taking my small hand in his. His hand was warm and felt very real. "I want to show you some things. I want to show you what is happening in the world right now and what is going to happen. People are very worried and very noisy down there, but they need to see what I see." I asked him, "Is the world broken, Jesus?" He smiled, but it was a little bit of a sad smile, like when you see a toy that is missing a wheel. "It is messy, little one, but I am an artist, and sometimes the mess is part of the making." Suddenly, we weren't just standing in the sugar light anymore. We were moving. It didn't feel like walking. It felt like flying without having to flap my arms. The light around us started to change. It wasn't just gold and white anymore. I started to see colors I don't have names for in my crayon box. There were colors that felt like smells and colors that felt like sounds. We were standing above the world now. It looked like a big, glowing marble spinning in the dark. It was so pretty, with all the blue water and green trees. But as we got closer to the part called America, I saw that it was covered in a thick, gray fog. The fog looked heavy, like a blanket made of smoke. Inside the fog, I could hear people shouting. It sounded like 1,000,000 people were having an argument at the same time. Some were angry, some were scared, and some were just loud because they wanted to be heard. Jesus pointed his finger toward the fog. This is the year you are living in, 2026. This is the time of sifting. I asked him what sifting meant because that is a big word for an 8-year-old. He didn't just tell me, he showed me. Suddenly, I saw a giant tray, like the ones my mom uses to bake cookies, but it was as big as a city. On the tray, there was a mixture of gold dust and heavy black rocks and lots of gray sand. The tray began to shake. It shook back and forth very fast. The sand started to fall through the holes, and the rocks started to bounce around. In 2026, Jesus said, I am shaking the nations. I am shaking the things people trust so they can see what is real and what is just pretend. I watched the tray shake and I saw that the gold dust was staying, but everything else was falling away. He showed me that many people are looking at the leaders of the world. He showed me the man I see on the television all the time, Donald Trump. In the vision, this man was standing in the middle of a very big, very loud windstorm. The wind was blowing so hard his tie was flying behind him. I saw some people trying to pull him down to the ground with ropes, and other people were trying to put a golden crown on his head. Jesus looked at the man, and then he looked at me. Do not look at the man as a king, and do not look at him as a monster, he said. The man is a tool in my hand, but the test is not for him alone. The test is for the hearts of the people. I saw that whenever this man spoke, or whenever people talked about him, a bright light would shine on the people listening. It was like a spotlight. If a person had hate in their heart, the spotlight made the hate look very dark and ugly. If a person had love and prayer in their heart, the spotlight made them glow like a candle. The sifting, Jesus said, is to show what is hidden inside. In 2026, I am pulling back the curtain. People think they are fighting about politics, but they are really showing me who they love more, themselves or their neighbors. As we stood there watching the giant tray shake, I saw that it wasn't just gold and rocks falling through. I saw things that looked like tiny, glowing seeds and other things that looked like dry, brown leaves. Jesus told me that the seeds were the prayers of children and the kind things people did when no one was watching. The brown leaves were the mean words people said on their phones and the lies that leaders told to make themselves look big. In 2026, the shaking is so strong that the brown leaves are blowing away like a whirlwind. Why is the shaking so scary, Jesus? I asked. I was holding onto his hand very tight. Even though I felt safe with him, the way the world was wobbling looked like a big earthquake made of feelings. He squeezed my hand back, and a warmth like a toasted marshmallow went up my arm. It is only scary if you are holding on to the things that can break, he said. If you are holding on to me, the shaking feels like a swing set. But many grown-ups have forgotten how to hold my hand. They are holding on to money, or their own names, or the man they want to be in charge. When those things shake, they feel like they are falling. He took me closer to the man in the windstorm, the one named Trump. I saw him sitting in a big room with lots of gold on the walls. Outside the windows, the wind was screaming, and the gray fog was pressing against the glass. The man looked tired. He was looking at a small candle on his desk, and the flame was dancing around like it was nervous. Jesus said, "Look at his shadow, Olivia." I looked, and his shadow wasn't just a dark shape on the floor. His shadow looked like a giant mirror. When people looked at him, they didn't see him. They saw themselves. People who were full of anger looked at him and saw more anger. People who were full of hope looked at him and saw a way to be free. Jesus told me that in 2026, this man is like a sign in the middle of a road. He makes people choose which way they are going to walk. He is part of the sifting because he makes everyone show their true colors. I saw a group of people standing on a hill far away from him. They were throwing rocks at the man's shadow, but the rocks were turning into gray smoke before they hit anything. Then I saw another group of people trying to build a wall around him to keep him safe. But the wall was made of glass, and it was cracking because the sifting was too strong. "Neither side sees him the way I do," Jesus whispered. I could hear a little bit of rain in his voice, like he was sad for them. One side wants to destroy him to feel powerful, and the other wants to worship him so they don't have to trust me. But in 2026, I am showing the world that no man can be a god, and no man can stop my plan. I am sifting the nation of America to see who will stop looking at the man and start looking at the heavens. Suddenly, the room with the gold walls disappeared, and we were standing in a field that stretched out forever. But instead of grass, the field was covered in millions of clocks. All the clocks were ticking at the same time, but they weren't saying the same time. Some were moving very fast, and some were moving backward. Jesus pointed to a big clock in the middle that was made of white stone. It didn't have numbers. It just had the words, "Now is the time." "The world thinks they have a long time to decide who they are," Jesus said. But 2026 is a year where time is getting squished. It is a year of fast things, fast changes, fast secrets coming out, and fast endings. I am sifting the time so that people have to choose right now. No more waiting. No more pretending. I saw a vision of a giant schoolhouse. All the leaders of the world were sitting in the desks, and they looked like little kids who hadn't done their homework. There were presidents and kings and people who owned big companies. A giant hand, the same one that was shaking the tray, was writing on the chalkboard. The words were, "How did you treat the least of these?" I watched as the leaders looked at the words. Some of them tried to hide their faces. Some tried to point at the person sitting next to them. But the light in the room was so bright that they couldn't hide anything. I saw their hearts through their shirts. Some hearts were bright and shiny, like a new penny. Those were the leaders who really cared. But many hearts looked like empty jars with nothing inside but dust. The sifting of the nation starts with the leaders, Jesus told me. In 2026, I am taking away the masks. If a leader says they love the people, but they really only love themselves, the whole world will see it. It will be like they are standing in their underwear in front of everyone. There will be no place to hide the truth anymore. I saw a specific vision of a map of the whole world. It looked like it was made of puzzle pieces, but the pieces were wiggling. Some countries were trying to grab pieces from other countries. I saw a dark shadow over the east and a flickering light over the west. But then I saw something beautiful. I saw tiny pinpricks of light starting to pop up everywhere. They weren't coming from the big cities or the fancy buildings. They were coming from backyards and kitchens and little churches in the woods. "What are those lights?" I asked. "Those are the ones who passed the sifting," Jesus said, and his face lit up like 1,000 Christmas trees. Those are the people who didn't get scared of the wind or the man or the gray fog. They are the ones who chose to love when everyone else was fighting. In 2026, these people will be the real leaders, even if they don't have a title. They are the ones holding the world together while it shakes. He showed me a vision of a bridge. On one side, everything was gray and loud and messy. On the other side, it was bright and peaceful like the place where we were standing. The bridge was narrow, and it was made of something that looked like golden thread. "The year 2026 is a bridge," Jesus said. Many people want to stay on the gray side because it is what they know. But the sifting is pushing them toward the bridge. They have to leave their heavy bags of anger and pride behind, or they won't be able to cross the golden thread. It is a year of letting go so you can move forward. I saw people trying to cross the bridge while carrying giant boxes labeled "My Way" and "My Power." As soon as they stepped on the thread, the boxes would fall into the water below. Only the people who came with empty hands and open hearts could walk across easily. I saw children leading their parents across because the kids didn't have any heavy boxes to carry. "I love the children," Jesus said, looking at me with those cocoa warm eyes. "They understand the sifting better than the grown-ups. They know that when the old toys break, I have something better to give them. We stayed by that golden thread bridge for what felt like a whole afternoon. But Jesus told me that in his house, time is like a beautiful song that never has to end. I watched a little boy, maybe even younger than me, walk across the thread. He wasn't carrying anything but a small, stuffed rabbit. As he walked, the rabbit started to glow until it looked like it was made of stars. Jesus laughed, and the sound made the air taste like strawberries. "See, Olivia," he said. "The things that are small and simple are the things that shine the brightest during the sifting. Grown-ups think they need big words and big piles of money to be safe in 2026, but really, they just need to be like that little boy. They just need to hold on to what is true." Suddenly, the bridge faded away, and we were standing in a place that looked like a giant, beautiful garden. But it wasn't a normal garden with just flowers and trees. This garden was made of people's lives. Every person in the world was like a plant in this garden. Some were tall and strong like oak trees, and some were small and bright like daisies. But there was something strange happening. A great wind was blowing through the garden, the same shaking wind from the tray vision. Jesus walked with me through the rows of people plants. He pointed to a group of trees that looked very fancy. They had shiny leaves and purple flowers, and they looked very proud. But when the sifting wind blew, I saw that their roots were very shallow. They were barely touching the dirt. They started to wobble and lean over. "These are the people who look good on the outside," Jesus told me. "In 2026, many people will try to look like they have all the answers. They will use loud voices and act like they are very important. But the sifting wind is looking for roots. It is looking for people who are rooted in love and honesty. If you only care about being famous or being right, the wind will knock you over." Then we saw a tiny little flower hiding under a big rock. It didn't look fancy at all, but its roots went down deep, deep into the ground. When the wind blew, the little flower didn't even shake. It just danced. Jesus knelt down and petted the little flower's petals. "This is what I am looking for," he whispered. "In 2026, the world will be very loud. There will be so much noise on the television and the internet that people will feel like their heads are going to pop. But the sifting is separating the noise from the whisper. My voice is the whisper, Olivia. You have to be quiet to hear it. The people who are quiet enough to hear me are the ones who will stay standing." He then showed me another vision of the man, Donald Trump. This time he was standing on a giant stage. There were thousands and thousands of people. Some were cheering so loud it hurt my ears, and some were booing and making angry faces. It looked like a big, messy ocean of feelings. I saw the man looking out at the crowd, and I could see his heart again. It was like a flickering lamp. Sometimes it was bright gold, and sometimes it turned a cloudy gray. Jesus said, "In 2026, the sifting is going to happen in the high places and the low places. I am using this man to shake the ground so that the things that are hidden can come into the light." Do you see the ropes, Olivia? I looked closer, and I saw that there were invisible ropes connected from the man to the people in the crowd. Some ropes were black and looked like they were made of heavy chains. Those were the ropes of hate. Some ropes were bright and looked like tinsel on a Christmas tree. Those were the ropes of people who thought the man was a savior. Both of those ropes are wrong, Jesus said firmly. The sifting is going to snap those ropes. I want my people to be tied only to me. In 2026, I am going to let things get very confusing so that people realize they can't put their trust in a person. They will try to find safety in a leader, but the leader will shake. They will try to find safety in a party, but the party will crumble. I am sifting the nation's trust. He showed me a vision of a giant treasure chest. It was overflowing with gold coins and sparkling jewels. But as the sifting tray shook, the gold coins started to turn into chocolate gold coins with nothing but foil on the outside. The jewels started to turn into plain glass. People were crying because they thought they were rich, but they were actually poor. In 2026, Jesus said, I am sifting what people think is valuable. People think money is their safety net. They think it is a thing they can lean on. But money is like the grass. It's here today and gone tomorrow. I am sifting the banks and the stores and the pockets of the rich. I want them to see that the only treasure that lasts is kindness. The only thing you can take with you when you come to see me is the love you gave away. I saw a woman who only had $1 in her hand. She gave it to a man who was sitting on a cold sidewalk. As soon as she dropped the dollar into his cup, it turned into a real solid gold coin that would never fade. Jesus smiled so big that the whole garden turned even brighter. "That is real wealth," he said. "The sifting is going to make the fake wealth disappear so people can find the real kind." We walked further, and I saw a big mountain. On top of the mountain, there were people in suits holding big megaphones. They were shouting at the people down below, telling them what to do and what to think. They were saying, "Believe this," and "Hate that." Their voices were so loud they made the ground shake. But then the sifting wind blew even harder. It blew the megaphones right out of their hands. The people on the mountain started to slip and slide down the rocks. They looked very scared because they didn't have their loud voices anymore. In 2026, Jesus told me, the loud voices will lose their power. I am sifting the words of the world. There are too many words, Olivia, too many opinions, too much talk. I am bringing a season of silence. In the silence, people will finally be able to hear their own hearts. They will be able to hear the truth that they have been trying to drown out with all that shouting. I saw a vision of a school classroom. The teacher was trying to tell the students something that wasn't true. She was telling them that they were just accidents and that there was no such thing as right or wrong. But the children in the class started to glow. They stood up and said, "No, we know the shepherd. We know we are loved." The teacher's words just fell to the floor like dead bugs. "The children are part of my sifting army," Jesus said with a twinkle in his eye. "They see through the games that grown-ups play. In 2026, I am going to give the children dreams and visions. They will tell their parents the truth, and the parents will be humbled. I am using the small to shake the big." He showed me a vision of a giant clock again. It was almost midnight. The ticking was getting louder. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Every tick felt like a heartbeat. "The year 2026 is a year of the great sorting," he said. "It is like when you are cleaning your playroom and you have to decide what to keep and what to throw in the trash. I am cleaning the earth, Olivia. I am sorting the nations like a shepherd sorts the sheep from the goats. I am looking for the ones who have mercy. I am looking for the ones who are brave enough to stand for what is right, even when everyone is booing." I saw a vision of a dark room with one tiny candle in the corner. Then someone else lit a candle from that one, then another and another. Soon, the whole room was full of light, and the darkness had nowhere to hide. "That is how the sifting ends," Jesus said. "It ends with the light being the only thing left. The 2026 sifting is a gift, even if it feels like a storm. It is the only way to get rid of the gray fog." He looked at me, and I felt like I was melting into a puddle of happiness. "Do you understand, little one?" I nodded, even though I was only 8. I understood that the world was like a giant rug that Jesus was shaking out to get all the dust off. It might be a little bit bumpy for the people standing on the rug, but when he was done, the rug would be clean and bright and beautiful again. The garden stayed around us for a little while longer, and I noticed that the trees and flowers weren't just pretty to look at, they were telling stories. Jesus took my hand, and we walked toward a big, shimmering pond. The water wasn't like the rain puddle that made me slip. It was like melted diamonds. When I looked into the water, I didn't see my own face. I saw millions of faces from all over the world. "Look closely, Olivia," Jesus said. "The sifting is not just for the famous people, it is for everyone. In 2026, I am looking into the deep parts of every soul. I am like a doctor checking to see if a heart is healthy or if it has become hard like a rock." In the water, I saw a vision of a big city. There were people running everywhere, looking at their little glowing phones. They looked so busy and so worried. I saw a man in a very expensive suit standing in a tall building. He was looking at numbers on a screen, and he looked very angry because the numbers were going down. Jesus showed me his heart, and it looked like it was wrapped in prickly barbed wire. "This man thinks his life is about the numbers," Jesus said softly. "The sifting in 2026 will take away his numbers, so he can finally feel the barbed wire. Only when he feels the hurt will he ask me to take it away. Sometimes I have to let things break so I can fix what really matters. Then the water changed, and I saw a woman in a different country. She was wearing old clothes and was stirring a big pot of soup for her children. She didn't have any fancy phones or tall buildings, but when I looked at her heart, it was glowing like a warm lantern. "She is already rich," Jesus said, and he sounded so proud. "The sifting will not hurt her. It will only make her light shine brighter so others can find their way to her door." In 2026, the people who the world thinks are nothing will become the everything. I am turning the world upside down so the right side can be up. He moved his hand over the water, and the vision of the man, Donald Trump, came back. This time, I saw him walking through a very thick woods. The trees were tall and dark, and there were lots of paths going in different directions. Some people were standing behind the trees, whispering mean things and trying to trip him up. Other people were trying to cut down the trees to make a straight road for him. I saw the man stop and look up at the sky. For a second, the gray fog above him parted, and a single ray of light hit his face. In that moment, he looked very small, like a little boy lost in the woods. Jesus said, "Many people argue about whether this man is good or bad, but in 2026, I am sifting him just like I am sifting the woman with the soup and the man with the numbers. I have put him in the middle of the storm to see if he will finally stop trusting his own strength. He is a man of great noise, but I am waiting for him to find the great silence." The sifting of 2026 will be very hard on him because the world will not stop screaming his name. But I am looking at the quiet moments when he is alone. Those are the moments that will decide the future of the nation. I saw a vision of a giant scale, like the ones in old stories about markets. On one side of the scale, there were all the speeches, the rallies, the news reports, and the gold buildings. It looked very, very heavy. On the other side of the scale, there was just one thing, a tiny glowing tear that the man had cried when no one was watching. To my surprise, the side with the tiny tear was heavier. It pulled the scale all the way down. "The world measures power by how loud someone can shout," Jesus told me. "But I measure it by how much someone is willing to be broken before me." In 2026, I am sifting the power of the mighty. I am showing that a single heart turning toward me is more powerful than an army or a mountain of money. The nations are being weighed, Olivia, and they are being found very light because they have forgotten how to be humble. Suddenly, the pond disappeared, and we were standing in a giant library. The shelves went up so high I couldn't see the ceiling. There were books of every color. Jesus pulled a big blue book off the shelf. He opened it, and I saw that the pages were moving like a movie. "This is the book of the nations," he said. "Every nation has a story. In 2026, many of these stories are reaching a place where they have to change. Look at America's page." I looked, and I saw the map of America again. It was pulsing with light, but there were dark cracks running through it. The cracks looked like they were getting wider. People were standing on opposite sides of the cracks, yelling across at each other. "The sifting is making the cracks show," Jesus said. "People think the cracks are the problem, but the cracks are just showing that the ground was already broken." In 2026, I am going to let the cracks get very wide so that people realize they cannot jump across them on their own. They will have to look up and ask me for a way over. I am sifting the pride of the country. They think they are the strongest, but I am showing them that without me, they are just dust. I saw a vision of the capital city. It looked like a giant hive of bees, but the bees were all fighting each other. I saw leaders sitting at long tables, but they weren't talking. They were just waiting for their turn to be loud. Under the tables, I saw that they were all holding onto bags of money and secret papers. Jesus waved his hand, and the tables turned into glass. Everyone could see what everyone else was holding. The leaders looked very embarrassed and tried to cover the glass with their coats, but the light was too bright. The sifting of 2026 is a sifting of secrets, Jesus said. Everything that was done in the dark is going to be shouted from the rooftops. If a leader took money to do something bad, the world will know. If a leader lied to start a fight, the world will know. I am cleaning my house, and the cleaning starts at the top. It will be a very messy time, and many people will be shocked. They will feel like their world is ending, but it is just the lies that are ending. He closed the blue book and put it back. He looked at me, and his face was so serious, but his eyes were still full of that cocoa-warm love. Olivia, the grown-ups are going to be very scared in 2026. They will see the news and think that everything is falling apart. They will see the leaders shaking and the secrets coming out and the money changing, and they will want to hide. But you must remember the sifting tray. I am only shaking out the dirt. The gold stays, the light stays, the people who love me stay. I saw a vision of a giant storm cloud over the whole earth. Lightning was flashing and thunder was rolling like a giant drum. People were running for cover. But then I saw a group of children, thousands of them, standing out in the rain. They weren't scared. They were holding up their hands, and the lightning wasn't hitting them. It was turning into colorful butterflies when it got close to them. The children know that the storm is just a car wash for the world, Jesus said with a laugh. In 2026, the simple people will have the most peace. While the leaders are trembling and the rich are crying, the ones who know me will be singing. They will see the sifting as a way to get closer to me. He took me to a high place where we could see the whole world again. I saw the year 2026 written in the stars. It was glowing with a strange flickering light. It is a year of great choosing, Jesus said. The sifting is the choice. Do you choose the noise or do you choose the whisper? Do you choose the man on the stage or do you choose the God in the heavens? Do you choose to be angry or do you choose to be kind? By the end of 2026, everyone will have made their choice, and the world will never be the same again. We left the high place and started walking through a field that looked like it was made of millions of tiny television screens and cell phones. They were all floating in the air, and they were all turned on. I could see news people talking very fast, and people on the internet typing angry words and big flashy signs with the year 2026 glowing on them. It was very loud, but because I was with Jesus, the noise didn't hurt my head. It just sounded like a swarm of bees far away. Jesus waved his hand over the floating screens. In 2026, the noise will become so loud that people will feel like they are drowning in it, he said. The sifting is going to happen in the information. People will hear 10 different stories about the same thing, and they won't know which one is true. They will look at their screens for answers, but the screens will only give them more questions and more reasons to be mad at each other. I saw a vision of a giant web. It looked like a spider web, but it was made of electricity and light. It was wrapped around the whole world. People were stuck in the web, and every time they got angry or shared a mean story, the web got tighter. This is the web of distraction, Jesus told me. In 2026, the sifting will break the web. I am going to let the noise get so confusing that people finally have to put their phones down. I am sifting the things that people listen to. If someone only listens to the news to find a reason to hate their neighbor, they will find themselves very lonely. But if they listen for my whisper, they will find a peace that the screens can't give. Then we saw the man Donald Trump again. He was in a very large room with big windows. Outside, there were thousands of people with signs. Some signs said, "We love you," and some signs said, "We hate you." The man was walking back and forth, and every time he took a step, the floor beneath him would shake. "See how the floor wobbles, Olivia?" Jesus asked. In 2026, the man is like a giant bowling ball being rolled down a lane. He is hitting all the pins that people thought were solid. He is hitting the government, he is hitting the banks, and he is hitting the churches. The sifting is not just about him, it is about the things he is bumping into. I saw a vision of a big old building that looked like a fancy museum. Inside, there were statues of all the things people thought were important. Statues of being right, having more money, and being famous. When the man walked past the building, the ground shook so hard that the statues fell off their pedestals and smashed into a million pieces. People were crying over the broken statues, but Jesus wasn't sad. The sifting is breaking the statues of the heart, Jesus said. People have made politics into an idol. They think that if their favorite person wins, they will be saved. And they think if the other person wins, the world will end. In 2026, I'm going to show them that neither of those things is true. I am sifting the hopes of the nation. I am breaking the fake gods so that people can see the real one. He showed me a vision of a courtroom. There were judges in black robes and lawyers talking very loud. The man was standing in the middle, and it looked like he was being measured by a giant, invisible ruler. The world wants to judge him, Jesus whispered. They want to find a reason to say he is the best or the worst. But look at the ruler, Olivia. I looked, and the ruler didn't have inches or centimeters. It had words like mercy, truth, and love. Every time a judge or a lawyer spoke a lie about the man, the ruler would glow a dark red. Every time the man himself spoke with pride instead of truth, the ruler would glow dark red. But every time someone prayed for him, or every time he had a humble thought, the ruler would sparkle like a diamond. In 2026, the sifting will happen in the courts, Jesus told me. It will look like a big fight over laws and papers. But I am using the courts to show the world that human justice is often very broken. I am sifting the justice of the land. I am going to let the systems fail so that people realize they need my justice, which is based on love, not on being the loudest in the room. We moved to a place that looked like a giant wheat field. It reminded me of the stories from the Bible. The wheat was tall and golden, and it smelled like warm bread. But mixed in with the wheat were these ugly, prickly weeds that Jesus called tares. The harvest is part of the sifting, Jesus said. He walked into the field and touched a piece of wheat, and it turned into a glowing light. Then he touched a weed, and it turned into dry dust. In 2026, I am letting the wheat and the weeds grow together until the very last minute. The wheat are the people who are kind and keep my peace. The weeds are the people who spread fear and anger. To the world, they might look the same right now. They might go to the same schools or work in the same buildings. Suddenly, a giant wind started to blow across the field. The wheat bowed down low, letting the wind pass over them. But the weeds stayed stiff and tall, trying to fight the wind. The wind caught the weeds and pulled them right out of the ground. But the wheat stayed safe. That is the 2026 sifting, Jesus said. The ones who are humble like the wheat will survive the storm. The ones who are stiff and proud like the weeds will be pulled up. I am sifting the character of the people. It is not about what you say you believe. It is about who you are when the wind blows. I saw a vision of a church. It was very big and had a steeple that touched the clouds. Inside, the music was loud and there were lots of people. But when the sifting wind blew through the church, I saw that many of the people were actually made of straw. They weren't real. Only a few people in the back were made of light. Even my house is being sifted, Jesus said, and his voice sounded a little bit like thunder. Many people say my name, but their hearts are far from me. In 2026, I am going to let the world become very difficult for churches. I am going to let the big buildings struggle. I want to see who is there for the show and who is there for the shepherd. The sifting will pull away the straw, and only the light will remain. It will be a smaller church, but it will be a real one. He showed me a vision of a kitchen table. An old woman was sitting there with a cup of tea and a Bible. She was praying for the leaders of the world, even the ones she didn't like. As she prayed, little golden threads started to come out of her heart and fly toward the man in the windstorm and the judges in the courtroom. She is doing more than the people on the television, Jesus said with a smile. She is a sifter of the dark. Her prayers are like little vacuums, sucking up the gray fog. In 2026, I'm going to show that the hidden prayers of the grandmothers are what truly hold a nation together. I am sifting the importance of things. The things the world thinks are big are actually small, and the things the world thinks are small are actually the biggest. We saw the man Donald Trump one more time in this vision. He was standing on a mountain of sand. Every time he tried to build something, the sand would slide down. He looked frustrated and angry. But then he stopped and sat down on the sand. He put his head in his hands and was quiet for a long, long time. In that quiet, a tiny flower started to grow in the sand right next to him. The sifting of 2026 is meant to bring people to their knees, Jesus said. Whether it is a president or a child, the goal is the same. I want them to stop trying to build on the sand. I want them to find the rock. The shaking will continue until people realize they can't save themselves. 2026 is the year of the great realization. I felt the sugar light around us getting thicker and warmer. I felt like I was being wrapped in 1,000 soft blankets. Jesus looked at me and winked. Don't worry about the sand, Olivia. Just remember the flower. The sugar light around us began to swirl like the glitter in a snow globe when you shake it really hard. Jesus held my hand and we started walking through a neighborhood that looked a lot like mine, with little houses and grassy yards and swing sets in the back. But in this vision, the houses didn't have wooden walls or brick chimneys. They were made of the things the people inside were thinking and feeling. I saw one house that was made of sharp gray rocks. Every rock had an angry word written on it, like, I'm right, or they are wrong. When the sifting wind blew against that house, the rocks would grind together and make a scary, screeching sound. Inside, I saw a mom and a dad sitting at a table, but they weren't eating. They were looking at a television and their faces were twisted up like they had just sucked on a sour lemon. They were arguing about the news, and their words were making more gray rocks appear. In 2026, Jesus said, and his voice made the gray rocks tremble. The sifting is coming into the living rooms. Many families have let the gray fog of the world come inside their front doors. They are letting the man on the screen or the man in the windstorm decide if they are going to be happy or mad. I am sifting the peace of the home. If a house is built on the anger of the world, the sifting will make the walls crack. I want the parents to stop looking at the news and start looking at their children. We moved to the next house, and it was made of beautiful, clear glass. It was so bright I could see everything inside. There was a family there too, and they were holding hands and praying. They were talking about the same things as the people in the rock house, but they weren't angry. They were asking for help, to be kind. When the sifting wind blew against the glass house, the glass didn't break. It actually turned into rainbows. The sifting reveals what is inside, Jesus told me. In 2026, the people who keep their hearts soft will find that the shaking only makes them more beautiful. The people who make their hearts hard like rocks will find that the shaking only makes them more miserable. I am sifting the atmosphere of the earth. I am looking for the places where I am welcome, and I am not welcome in the middle of a fight. Then we were suddenly standing back in Washington, the place with all the white buildings and the tall pencil-shaped monument. I saw the man, Donald Trump, again. He was standing on a balcony, looking out at the city. The city looked like it was made of 1,000 different puzzles that were all mixed up. Pieces of the puzzles were flying through the air, and everyone was trying to catch them and put them together, but nothing was fitting right. I saw the man reach out to grab a puzzle piece, but as soon as he touched it, it turned into a little bird and flew away. He tried again, and the same thing happened. He looked very confused. Jesus said, in 2026, I am sifting the plans of men. This man thinks he can put the puzzle back together with his own hands. Many people think he can too, but the sifting of 2026 is to show that the puzzle cannot be fixed by a person. I'm making the pieces move and change so that the leaders realize they are not the ones in control. I am sifting the pride of the rulers. They think they are the ones making history, but I am the one who holds the pen. I saw a vision of a giant wave of water coming toward the city. It wasn't a scary, drowning wave. It was a wave of bright, golden light. It washed over the white buildings and the man on the balcony and all the people in the streets. When the light hit the buildings, I saw that some of them were actually hollow inside, filled with nothing but old, dusty cobwebs. When the light hit the people, some of them began to glow, but others tried to run away and hide in the shadows. The 2026 sifting is a wave of truth, Jesus said. Light is the hardest thing for a lie to stay around. In 2026, I am sifting the secrets of the nations. There are leaders who have done things they think no one will ever find out. They have taken things that didn't belong to them and said things that were false. The sifting is the light that shows the cobwebs. People will be very upset when they see the truth of their leaders, but the truth is the only thing that can set the nation free. He showed me a vision of a giant forest. Half of the trees were being shaken so hard their leaves were falling off, and the other half were staying perfectly still. I looked closer and saw that the trees being shaken were the ones that were all tangled up with each other, trying to steal each other's sunlight. The trees that were still were the ones that were standing alone, rooted deep in the ground, but reaching their branches out to help the smaller trees around them. In 2026, Jesus said, I am sifting the way people connect. There is a lot of us versus them in the world right now. People think they have to be in a group to be safe. They think they have to belong to a party or a side. But the sifting is going to shake the groups. I am sifting the loyalty of the people. I want them to be loyal to the light, not to a crowd. It will be a lonely year for some, but in the loneliness, they will find me. I saw a vision of the man, Donald Trump, sitting in a small, quiet church. There was no one else there. He was sitting in the very back pew, and he was wearing a simple coat, not a fancy suit. He looked at the cross at the front of the room, and I saw a vision of his heart again. This time, it wasn't flickering like a lamp. It was steady, like a small, quiet coal in a fireplace. Jesus whispered, "The sifting is to bring the high places low and the low places high. Even this man, who the whole world talks about, must be sifted until he is just a man again." In 2026, the noise of the world will try to keep him in the windstorm, but I am sifting his soul to see if he will come to the quiet. The fate of many things depends on the quiet moments, not the loud ones. He showed me a vision of a giant mountain made of ice. The mountain was called The Way Things Have Always Been. People were climbing the mountain thinking it was solid and safe, but I saw the sun of 2026 starting to shine very hot on the ice. The mountain started to melt, and the people started to slide. They were screaming and trying to grab onto anything they could. The sifting of 2026 is a melting of the old ways, Jesus said. People trust in the way things used to be. They want to go back to a time they remember. But you cannot go back, Olivia. You can only go forward into the light. I am sifting the traditions and the old systems. Many things that people think are too big to fail will melt like ice in the summer. I am doing this so they will build on something that doesn't melt. I saw a vision of a little girl, maybe even younger than me, sitting on a sidewalk. She was drawing on the ground with colorful chalk. She drew a picture of a lion and a lamb sitting together. As she drew, the picture started to come to life and glow. People walking by stopped and looked at it, and for a second, their angry faces turned soft. That is the power of the simple ones. In 2026, while the leaders are fighting and the mountains are melting, the ones who create beauty and speak peace will be the real heroes. I am sifting the courage of the people. It takes more courage to be kind in a world of anger than it does to be a king. He took me to a place that looked like a giant golden field of wheat again, but this time I saw that each piece of wheat had a name on it. I looked for mine and I found it. It was glowing so bright. Then I saw names of people I knew, and even the name of the man, Donald Trump, was on a piece of wheat nearby. The sifting is for everyone because I love everyone, Jesus said, and his voice was like a warm blanket around my heart. I am not shaking the world to be mean. I am shaking it so that everyone has a chance to turn toward the light. 2026 is a year of mercy wearing the clothes of a storm. The golden field of wheat seemed to go on forever. But then Jesus began to walk faster, and the field turned into a giant map of the whole entire world spread out on the floor of the universe. It wasn't a flat map like the one in my classroom. It was a map that moved and breathed. The oceans were real water, and the mountains were real rock. In 2026, Jesus said, pointing his finger toward the edges of the map, I am not just shaking one house or one man. I am shaking the borders of the nations. The sifting is global, Olivia. People think that what happens in one place doesn't matter in another. But the world is like a big sweater. If you pull one thread, the whole thing starts to wiggle. I saw the country of America in the middle, and it looked like a giant heart that was beating very fast. Around it, other countries were watching. I saw leaders from far away, men and women in different clothes and speaking different languages. And they were all leaning over the map, trying to see what was happening in America. They looked worried, and some of them looked like they were waiting for something to break so they could grab a piece of it. The sifting of 2026 is going to show the greed of the nations, Jesus told me. His voice was calm, but I could feel the strength in it, like the rumble of a big truck. Many countries have built their safety on how much they can take from others. But I am sifting the hands of the world. In 2026, the hands that are grabbing will find that what they grab turns to smoke. Only the hands that are giving will find something solid to hold on to. He showed me a vision of a giant telephone line that went all around the world. But instead of people talking, it was full of gray birds. These birds were flying back and forth, and they were carrying little pieces of paper in their beaks. On the papers were the stories and the news I saw earlier. The birds were very noisy, and they were all trying to sing at the same time, but they weren't singing a pretty song. They were just squawking. These are the birds of rumor and fear, Jesus said. In 2026, I am sifting the air. There is so much talk that the truth has been hidden under a pile of gray feathers. I am going to send a wind that will blow the feathers away. The gray birds will lose their voices, and the people will finally have to look at what is real. I am sifting the ears of the people. They have been listening to the squawking for too long, and they have forgotten how to hear the truth. I saw a vision of the man, Donald Trump, again. He was standing in the middle of a giant circle of those gray birds. They were flying all around his head, making a lot of noise. Some were trying to poke him with their beaks, and others were trying to drop golden glitter on him. He looked like he was trying to bat them away with his hands. Jesus said, in 2026, the sifting of this man's words will be like a fire. He will say many things, and the birds will carry them to every corner of the map. Some will use his words to start fires of anger, and some will use them to build walls of pride. But I am sifting the fruit of his words. People will see that words without love are just like the gray feathers. They don't have any weight. I am showing the world that even the most famous man is just a breath in the wind. The sifting will show who is listening to the man and who is listening to me. I saw a vision of a giant ocean. The water was very dark, and there were big waves crashing against the shore. I saw lots of boats on the water. Some were big, fancy ships with gold flags, and some were tiny little rowboats. The big ships were the political parties and the big organizations. They were trying to steer through the waves, but the waves were too strong. Every time a ship tried to turn, the sifting wind would push it back. The people on the big ships were screaming at each other, trying to decide who should be the captain. They were throwing things overboard to make the ship lighter, but they were throwing the wrong things. They were throwing out kindness and honesty, and they were keeping the heavy boxes of gold and power. In 2026, Jesus whispered, the big ships will find that their gold is what sinks them. I am sifting the structures of the world. People have put their faith in the system. They think if the laws are right or the money is right, they will be safe. But the sifting is showing that the system is made of wood that is rotting. I am letting the waves shake the ship so that the people will jump into the water and find that I am the only one who can keep them from sinking. I saw one tiny rowboat that was doing just fine. There was only one person in it, and they weren't even trying to steer. They were just sitting still, looking up at the sky. The waves didn't crash over them. They just moved the boat gently along. That person has passed the sifting of 2026, Jesus said with a smile that felt like a warm hug. They have let go of the need to be the captain. They have decided that the storm is mine, and the sea is mine, and their life is mine. In 2026, the people who lose their control are the ones who will actually find their way home. He showed me a vision of a giant mirror that was as big as the sky. It was hanging over America. When the people looked up, they didn't see the clouds, they saw themselves. But they didn't see their faces, they saw their spirits. I saw people who looked like they were covered in mud, and I saw people who looked like they were made of light. I saw the man, Donald Trump, look up at the mirror. In the mirror, his spirit looked like a giant puzzle that was missing several pieces. He was looking for the pieces on the ground, but they weren't there. Then I saw a group of children, just like me, standing in a circle and praying. Their prayers looked like the missing puzzle pieces made of pure white light. They were floating up toward the man in the mirror. The sifting of 2026 is a call to prayer, Jesus said. Many people are sifting through the news to find something to be mad about, but I am calling my people to sift through their hearts to find something to pray about. The prayers of the children are the only things that can finish the puzzle. I am sifting the focus of my church. Will they focus on the man, or will they focus on the mission of love? I saw a vision of a giant clock again, but this time the hands were moving backward. I was confused. Jesus, why is the clock going the wrong way? Because in 2026, I am sifting the history of the nation, he answered. I am going back to the beginning to show where the rot started. I am bringing up old things that were hidden, old mistakes, old lies, and old hurts. People want to move forward, but you cannot move forward if you are still tied to a lie from the past. The sifting is a deep cleaning of the nation's soul. It will feel like the country is going backward, but it is really just getting ready to jump forward. I saw a vision of a big schoolhouse again. The children were sitting at their desks, and they were all wearing white robes that glowed. Outside the windows, the gray fog and the wind were raging, but inside, the children were learning how to speak a new language. It wasn't a language with words, it was a language with light. This is the language of the future, Jesus said. In 2026, the old way of speaking, the shouting and the arguing, will start to die out. People will be so tired of the noise that they will start looking for a new way to be. The sifting is making room for a new generation of light bearers. They will not care about the man on the stage or the money in the bank. They will only care about the light. He took my hand and we started to rise even higher. I could see the whole world again, and the year 2026 was pulsing underneath the gray fog like a heartbeat. The sifting was everywhere, like a giant invisible machine that was sorting the good from the bad and the real from the fake. Olivia, Jesus said, and his eyes were so deep, I felt like I could see forever in them. The year 2026 is a year of the great sifting, but remember that sifting is what a baker does to make the flour pure for the bread. I am making bread for the world. I am making something that will feed the hungry souls. The shaking and the noise are just the process. The end is the bread of life. I felt the sugar light getting even stronger, and I knew that soon I would have to go back to the hospital in my yellow boots. But I wasn't sad. I knew that even in the middle of the big 2026 sifting, I was safe in the baker's hands. The sugar light around us started to change again. It became a very soft purple, like the color of the sky right before the stars come out. Jesus led me to a place that looked like a giant theater, but there were no seats and no movie screen. Instead, the walls were made of living memories. I could see everything that had ever happened, but Jesus told me to look at the part that said 2026 in glowing letters. In 2026, Jesus said, I am sifting the fame of the world. People love to be seen. They love to have their names in lights and their faces on the screens, but I am sifting the why behind the what. I am looking at why people do what they do. He showed me a vision of a giant stage. There were hundreds of leaders on the stage, and they were all performing. Some were dancing, some were giving loud speeches, and some were pretending to help people while looking at a camera to make sure someone was filming it. Every time someone did something just to be seen, their clothes would turn into heavy lead. They started to move slower and slower until they couldn't move at all. They were stuck on the stage, weighted down by their own pride. Then I saw a few people who were off the stage, in the dark corners, doing simple things. One was tying a child's shoe. One was giving a cup of water to a tired person. One was just sitting quietly and praying. Every time they did these things, they turned into light. They didn't even know they were glowing. The sifting of 2026 will show who is heavy and who is light, Jesus told me. The people who are heavy with their own fame will find the year very difficult. They will feel like they are sinking, but the light ones will feel like they are flying. I am sifting the motives of the heart. In 2026, it won't be enough to do good things. You have to do them for the right reasons. He showed me the man, Donald Trump, again. He was standing in a room filled with mirrors. In every mirror, he looked different. In one, he looked like a soldier. In another, he looked like a king. In another, he looked like a tired old man. He was trying to figure out which mirror was the real one. Jesus said, the sifting of 2026 is a sifting of identity. This man has many faces because the world has given him many faces. But I am sifting away the faces the world gave him. I am shaking the mirrors until they all break. I want him to see the face I gave him when he was a little boy. The sifting of the nation is tied to this. People are following a face, but I am looking for a soul. In 2026, the world will see the man without the mirrors. It will be a moment of great truth for him and for everyone who watches him. I saw a vision of a giant golden key falling from the sky. It landed in the middle of America. Everyone ran toward it, trying to grab it. They thought the key would open a chest of money or a door to power. But when the man, Donald Trump, touched the key, it turned into a Bible. When a different leader touched it, it turned into a loaf of bread. When a child touched it, it turned into a flower. The sifting is showing people what they really want, Jesus explained. In 2026, I am going to give people what they ask for, but it might not look like what they expect. I am sifting the desires of the heart. If someone wants power, the sifting will show them how heavy power is. If someone wants love, the sifting will show them how simple love is. The year 2026 is a year of getting what you truly look for. He showed me a vision of a giant school bell. It started to ring, and the sound was so loud it shook the gray fog right off the trees. All across the world, people stopped what they were doing. They looked up. I saw people in offices, people in cars, and people in hospitals all stopping at the same time. The sifting is a wake-up call, Jesus said. The bell is ringing in 2026. It is the sound of the end of the sleep. People have been walking around like they are in a dream, just doing what the television tells them to do. But the sifting is going to poke them until they wake up. They will look around and say, "What have we been doing? Why have we been so mean to each other?" It will be a year of waking up to the truth that we are all part of the same family. I saw a vision of a giant bridge made of light stretching from the year 2026 into the future. It looked very strong, but it was also very narrow. Only a few people were walking on it at first. But then, as the sifting wind blew behind them, more and more people started to run toward the bridge. They were dropping their heavy bags of anger and their boxes of being right so they could fit on the bridge. The sifting is the path to the bridge, Jesus said. I am making the old world very uncomfortable so that people will want to move toward the light. I am sifting the comfort of the people. If you are too comfortable in the dark, you will never look for the light. So in 2026, I am making the dark very shaky and very loud. It is my mercy that makes the world shake so that the people will find the things that cannot be shaken. I saw a vision of the man, Donald Trump, standing at the beginning of that bridge. He was looking back at the windstorm and the gray fog, and then he looked forward at the light. He had to make a choice. I saw him take one step toward the light, and as he did, the heavy lead on his shoulders started to melt away. Everyone has to choose their step in 2026, Jesus whispered. The sifting is the choice. The man on the stage has to choose, and the little girl in the driveway has to choose. No one is too big, and no one is too small to miss the sifting. I am looking for the ones who will step onto the bridge of light. Then we were back in the sugar light garden, and the air smelled like rain and flowers again. I felt very peaceful, like I had just finished a really good book and I knew how it ended. I knew that even though the sifting of 2026 looked like a big scary storm, it was really just Jesus cleaning up the world so we could all see clearly again. He knelt down one more time and looked into my eyes. Olivia, the world is going to say that 2026 is a year of chaos. They will say it is a year of fighting and falling apart. But you tell them what you saw. Tell them it is the year of the great sifting. Tell them that the shepherd is shaking the ground to find his sheep. Tell them to not be afraid of the shaking, because I am holding the tray. I saw a vision of a giant heart wrapped around the whole world. It was pulsing with a soft pink light. Every time the world shook, the heart got a little bit tighter, like it was giving the earth a big hug. The sifting is a hug from heaven, Jesus said with a laugh that sounded like silver bells. It is the way I bring my children back to me. When everything else falls away, they finally see me standing there with my arms open. I hugged his neck, and he felt like everything good in the world. I didn't want to go back to the hospital or the itchy dresses or the long songs. But I knew I had to go tell people to stop being scared of the sifting. I had to tell them that 2026 was just the year the light won. One last thing, little one, Jesus said as the garden started to fade into the hospital sounds. Tell them to pray for the man in the wind and pray for the leaders on the stage. But mostly, tell them to pray for their own hearts to be made of gold. The gold is the only thing that stays after the sifting. The sugar light around us started to change again. It became a very soft purple, like the color of the sky right before the stars come out on a summer night. Jesus led me to a place that looked like a giant theater, but there were no seats and no movie screen. Instead, the walls were made of living memories. I could see everything that had ever happened to everyone, but Jesus told me to look at the part that said 2026 in glowing letters that looked like they were made of neon rainbow yarn. In 2026, Jesus said, and his voice felt like a warm breeze through a window, I am sifting the fame of the world. People love to be seen. They love to have their names in lights and their faces on the screens. But I am sifting the why behind the what. I am looking at why people do what they do. He showed me a vision of a giant stage. There were hundreds of leaders on the stage, and they were all performing. Some were dancing, some were giving loud speeches, and some were pretending to help people while looking at a camera to make sure someone was filming it. Every time someone did something just to be seen, their clothes would turn into heavy lead. They started to move slower and slower until they couldn't move at all. They were stuck on the stage, weighted down by their own pride. Then I saw a few people who were off the stage, in the dark corners, doing simple things. One was tying a child's shoe. One was giving a cup of water to a tired person. One was just sitting quietly and praying. Every time they did these things, they turned into light. They didn't even know they were glowing. The sifting of 2026 will show who is heavy and who is light, Jesus told me. The people who are heavy with their own fame will find the year very difficult. They will feel like they are sinking, but the light ones will feel like they are flying. I am sifting the motives of the heart. In 2026, it won't be enough to do good things. You have to do them for the right reasons. He showed me the man, Donald Trump, again. He was standing in a room filled with mirrors. In every mirror, he looked different. In one, he looked like a soldier. In another, he looked like a king. In another, he looked like a tired old man. He was trying to figure out which mirror was the real one. Jesus said, the sifting of 2026 is a sifting of identity. This man has many faces because the world has given him many faces. But I am sifting away the faces the world gave him. I'm shaking the mirrors until they all break. I want him to see the face I gave him when he was a little boy. The sifting of the nation is tied to this. People are following a face, but I am looking for a soul. In 2026, the world will see the man without the mirrors. It will be a moment of great truth for him and for everyone who watches him. Then, the sugar light started to get smaller, like when you're watching a movie and the screen starts to go dark right at the end. But I could still feel Jesus' hand on my shoulder. It felt like a warm sunbeam that stayed there even after the sun went behind a cloud. He told me one more time, don't forget, Olivia, the sifting is just the cleaning. Revelation is not for fear, but for awakening. Then the music of the garden and the sound of his laugh started to turn into a different sound. It was a beep, beep, beep sound. It was the sound of a machine. Suddenly, I felt very heavy. I felt like I was being stuffed back into an old heavy coat that was a little bit too tight and a little bit damp. I felt the cold air in my throat, and I smelled that sharp, clean hospital smell that smells like lemons and soap. I opened my eyes. Everything was white and very bright, but not the sugar light kind of bright. It was the kind of bright that makes you blink a lot. I saw my mom. She was sitting in a chair right next to me, and her eyes were all red and puffy from crying. When she saw me look at her, she let out a little squeak and grabbed my hand. Olivia? Oh my goodness, baby, are you here? She asked. She was shaking a lot. I took a little breath and whispered, "I saw him, Mom. I saw the sifting tray." The last 13 days since that day have been very strange. I came home from the hospital a few days ago. My yellow boots are still by the door. I've started praying for the man in the vision. I pray that he finds the great silence and that he sees the mirrors break. I hope everyone finds the light before the sifting wind gets too strong. When I finally opened my eyes, it felt like waking up from a 1,000-year dream. The world around me was the same, but I wasn't. I could hear the quiet behind every sound, the heartbeat beneath the noise. Mom leaned over me, tears streaking her face. "Baby, you're here," she whispered. I smiled weakly. "Mom, he talked to me." She froze. "Who?" I said it softly. "Jesus." The room went silent except for the slow, steady beeping of the monitor. I could see confusion and awe in her eyes. "He told me things, Mom, about people, about 2026, about Trump." Her hand trembled as she brushed my hair. "What did he say?" I looked past her toward the window where the evening light turned the glass gold. "He said that year won't be an ending, it'll be a beginning. People will stop trusting noise and start listening again. He said hearts will divide before they heal, but love will win." Mom whispered, "That sounds like hope." I nodded. "He said hope will look like ordinary people choosing kindness when the world tells them to choose sides." I could feel warmth still pulsing in my chest, the same warmth from his hand. "Mom," I said, "he doesn't want us to be scared of change. He wants us to be ready for light." She closed her eyes and whispered, "Then that's what we'll do." That night, even with machines still humming beside me, the room felt holy, like heaven hadn't left completely. This story isn't about a miracle. It's about mercy. And maybe if you're listening right now, it's a reminder that heaven is still reaching for earth through people, through love, through every small choice that brings light where there was noise, because that's what he showed me. The world isn't ending. It's remembering.